In this episode of the Military Mindset for Business podcast, I'm chatting with Glen and Rowena Ferrarotto. Now, super cool story. First of all, as a Ramey guy myself, I just love Glen's sharing the stories of changing gearbox and swinging spanners in the middle of the battle in Afghanistan. But we also talk about, their relationship. We talk about how they managed to go through 10 years of a military career and supporting each other during multiple operations. But the story doesn't end there. It's about fantastic enterprise and entrepreneurship, the creation of Ironside Resources, a multi-award winning company providing recruitment services for veterans, and ultimately, Glen, not just a corporal, getting to one of the highest seats within the Department of Veteran Affairs in Australia, which is the Repatriation Commissioner. So we unpack Rowie and Glen's journey through a career of service. Stay tuned. If this is the first part of the pod you listen to, stop, go back, listen to the first bit at like all the cool worries. But what I want to really do now is really talk about the next evolution of you guys now as a couple, as business owners, as entrepreneurs, and talk about next. So when did you guys come to either a single or a mutual decision that Army's great, best job I ever had, but there's something else out there?
Well, we were posted to Melbourne, right? So
Home.
we were posted home to two company over in Williamstown.
Bayside. Beautiful part of Melbourne.
Good spot.
Miles apart, miles away from our home area,
Yeah.
which we now live in.
Yeah.
The north.
What unit were you with then?
Two Commando company, but
Okay,
first
yeah.
Commando Regiment, yeah.
Reserve unit.
Reserve unit, yeah.
Is this Swan Island?
No. Williamstown.
Oh, Williamstown. Yeah, gotcha.
Yeah. So we were home, right?
You've done your deployment.
Yep.
You were effectively there for rest and recovery.
Yeah, and then they were going to send me over to Perth, which at the time it was everyone's. Well, it was my dream. I wanted it. I wanted it dearly to. Probably wanted it a lot more than I wanted it when I got home from that second trip, Pete. So I kind of being at two Commando company was a lot of fun for the first maybe, I don't know, it felt like, how long was it there for? I can't really.
So you got back
6 months.
early 2008.
Yeah.
And we were at Williamstown then.
Yeah.
And I think it was meant to be a 2-year posting.
Yeah, maybe 2 years.
But you pulled the pin.
Yeah.
10 years. 10 years in Army.
They were trying to get me to do sergeant courses, Pete. So I'd done my my subject 2. I needed to do subject 4 and subject 1 before I'd be promoted to sergeant to go to Perth. And I think a bit of the Army had been stripped out of me. I pretty much had done everything I wanted to do serving in the Army, and I was really comfortable with the decision that we've made together that I would forgo promotion. I wouldn't continue to seek. I wasn't seeking promotion in any case, but I wouldn't go on those promotion courses. For me, the priority became spending more time at home with Ro. We were talking about having kids, how that was going to play out if we were going to be posted to Perth, and we knew, and history shows us that the rotations continued at an even higher rate.
Non-stop. Where are we? 2012-ish now?
Right,
No, we're only in 8 at this time.
Only in 8.
Yeah, we're only in 8.
And Glen had done 10 years of service.
Yeah.
So that was always also a really big.
Yes, I did my
10 year milestone.
Yeah.
We had always said that we wanted to have kids post defence career.
Yeah.
We didn't want to drag kids around or me to do the maternity leave bit.
And I was influenced a little bit. I mean, we both were. The decision, and we tell we tell soldiers, sailors, aviators, officers these days that the decision has to be a family decision to transition from defence. It can't be an individual decision. And if you're single, it becomes a decision that you talk to with your siblings, that you talk to with your parents. because they're going through the journey of defence with you. Every one of your close family members are. And so the decision was our decision. It was influenced by our families as well, but in a positive way. My dad, my sister were both in financial planning. There was mortgage broking. Mum was she still teaching, or she'd retired as a teacher? I don't know, but so Rowie had influence around her too, obviously. And so it wasn't a hard decision to make, Pete. I just
I remember it being a pretty swift decision, really. But the biggest part of it was, well, what do I do now?
Yeah, what do I do? Yeah.
What the hell have I? I don't want to be a mechanic long term. What do I do?
Yeah,
what am I worth? And they were big, heavy discussions. So.
Yeah. We probably sat down over many nights and had those discussions.
Yeah. The other side, you'd also been given a medal when you've been awarded.
I was. Yeah, it was the Australian Day medallion
That's right.
from General Hindmarsh, so from Sokost. And this was for a job independent of Afghanistan. We repatriated an LRPV to the Australian War Memorial, which now sits on display, 150, and that was a great job. For another time, I'll tell that story. But I was awarded a medallion, an Australia Day medallion for that, which was wonderful, and a lot of it was about engaging and networks and acting in a capacity that far outweighed the Raincoat War. There was all wording towards that sort of those connotations, and I know that was a tough moment, wasn't it? Really? Yeah.
That was sort of end of Sydney where you were thinking you might get promoted, and is that sort of encouraging you to do that? So there was a lot of this going on, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Ultimately,
mate, I pulled a pin and started applying for jobs. Well, I started applying for jobs before I transitioned.
It's really interesting. Actually, Ro,
you snuck a trip in overseas.
Yeah.
Ro, where are you in your headspace with this? Like from being, it's simply not easy being, partner, wife, spouse of someone who's away. Are you getting sick of it yet, or are you dutifully supporting?
It's been a dutiful supporter, I think.
Yeah.
We're here in this business always, with the next goal in mind, with the next risk we've got to take to get the bigger reward. It was sort of always a bit. My job was secure. As I said earlier, I had a career at NAB for 13 years. So I'd moved with my, the division of NAB that I worked with, MLC. When we moved to Melbourne, I took my job with me. My team that I worked with avidly supported me taking my job with me to Melbourne. There was a massive project down here. I just kept getting promoted. I was in a senior leadership role in my team at MLC when Glen was overseas. So I was acting head of department. I was working at long hours. I had great team members around me that I worked with that I caught up with on the weekends. So, I was on that great, strong career trajectory. I was earning pretty well, and I wanted Glen to join me, honestly. Yeah. I just felt like there was so much that he could do. It was just actually about trying to articulate what that was. And I remember a big shift in his mental thinking around what he could do was when he got his CV done professionally. I don't know who did it, but it really articulated beautifully those soft skills that he had, not just as a mechanic and his hard technical knowledge, but his soft skills and his natural leadership. And, some of the words that came out of that the Australia Day medallion, and they were put into a CV that just went, wow, any employer would be like,
wow, is this me? Like, really?
Yeah. We sat on the couch and we turned and went, oh, shit.
This bloke sounds all right. Who is he?
This is bloke, yeah.
So then started applying for really ambitious roles in leadership roles in that mechanical trade, in industry and defence. And then, you can tell those stories.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I was applying for jobs that were way above naively, they weren't right for me. But I was applying for them, and I don't know whether I was chasing the title or I just thought I could do it, right? And so an example of that is
like industry showcase things.
A couple of those things. Yeah. But I applied for a job with I think it was MTU, Detroit Diesel, as a workshop supervisor or workshop manager. And I thought I can do that. I've been doing that. How hard could it be? and I thought I'll take all of the things that I know, that I've learned from defence, and the CV says that I can do that, so I'm sure I can do it. So anyway, I was given an interview, and I remember sitting at the table of the boardroom. I was so nervous, mate. I was dressed incorrectly. I think I was wearing a suit and a tie. A lady came down the stairs, her high heels, it was like down the stairs, and she came in, sat down. She took one look at me, and she said, "You're nervous, aren't you?" And I couldn't talk, mate. I was so nervous that I couldn't talk. I nearly passed out. And I said, I am. I think I've got the words out. I am.
Yeah.
And she took the time, instead of saying the interview's over, she took the time, and the time was about half an hour, to help me understand why I wasn't right for that position, and what lessons I could take from, within that period of time. She talked to me about interviewing, about presentation, and mate,
It was most valuable.
that was a game changer. Even in those very early days, that sort of led me to start to think about what do we know versus what don't we know versus what we think we know, and all those sorts of things. And anyway, so that was really valuable experience. There were a couple of other circumstances that occurred, and then finally I was offered an interview with an automotive company that was doing a defence project with Land Rovers, and if there was anything I knew, mate, inside and out, it was a Land Rover.
Yeah.
And they needed a project leader. I applied for the job, and I was successful, and I started work. I left Army 2 Commando Company on the Friday, and I started work on a Monday.
Did you stay as a chock, or did you stay as a chock, or
did.
just
Yeah, I
separate?
did.
Yeah.
Initially, I worked through my long service leave, and then I stayed on as a chock for about a year. But we were living at the time over in Eltham, and the travel time to Williamstown was an hour and a half each way. And look, the guys that I worked with that were regular soldiers at 2 Commando that I knew when I was a regular soldier, they'd all been posted out. The culture had shifted a little bit. And look, mate, I just knew that I wasn't going to be able to be a good reservist, so I decided to make a full transition. Yeah.
Where does the thing that I'm super keen about and really passionate about now is this seed of enterprise or entrepreneurship? Where does the spark come from between the two of you? Because is Ironside your first business?
Well, the brand is Ironside is actually. Oh,
Ironside Defence and Mining.
Yeah, defence and mining. But there were a couple of. I became a director of. Oh no, it was Ironside Defence and Mining was the first business that you and I registered. Yeah. So yeah, that stemmed out of a point in time that I was made redundant. So I worked. I left that initial job, and I went into business development. I used to see the business development guy in that first company driving around in a nice car and doing all the trips, and I thought, well,
and it's defence industry.
Yeah, and it was defence industry. I thought, oh shit, that looks like a good role. How do you get into that? So I started thinking about it, and I worked with a recruiter that still does work in the defence industry, and I still see him occasionally, and he still takes credit for my career, which he should. And he found a job for me as a business development manager with a British company. And the interview process for that, Pete, was quite extraordinary. I did one face-to-face interview, and I was then invited to an opening of a big facility that they were launching in Keysborough, and there were politicians and defence industry people and uniformed people all invited. And I just thought, they're just bringing me along so that I can see what the company does. So naively, I went along, and I started chatting to people, and I had a beer, and I thought to myself, oh, this is great. The business is excellent. I'm learning a lot about it. And anyway, when the open day or the launch of the business was completed and people were walking home, I did the same thing. I walked past the offices at the front, and I was tapped on my shoulder as I walked past one of the front offices and asked to come into the office. So I went in, and the British directors were there. They'd come over from UK for the launch, and they sat me down. They said, congratulations, you've passed the second interview, and we'd like to offer you the job. And no word of a lie, Pete. So that's what happened, and I started work as a BDM. And look, I don't know,
I'll
Rowie.
think a little bit. The BDM consulting stuff.
Yeah, I did that for maybe 18 months in defence industry. That company ended up for issues over in the UK, not in Australia. They went insolvent, and I was made redundant. Rowena was heavily pregnant at the time.
We're just 9 and 10, I reckon. So we were. This is how you got into Ironside Defence and Mining.
Yeah, you were pregnant with Emily.
No, that's when Ironside Recruitment was born out of Ironside DM Consulting.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, shit. See, my memory's terrible. It must have been my second wife.
She was born in 2011. So.
Yeah. No, it was. It was defence and mining.
Anyway.
Yeah. Anyway, there you go, Pete. It's been a while. So anyway, instead of getting a job, I decided to set up a little consultancy and called Ironside Defence and Mining. And the idea was that I'd take defence-related technology and transition that to the mining sector. Because I was doing a little bit of that as a business development manager for this British company, and I could take some of those lessons learned. I remember being told by a brigadier at the time that I shouldn't do it, that it'll never work, that I didn't have the network, that I wasn't senior enough, having left defence, to be able to run my own consultancy, and that it was going to fail. And I still see that same person whom I have a lot of respect for occasionally, and he still inevitably says sorry whenever I see him. To his credit,
period of your life to kick you into gear, right?
Yeah, that's what it did. It just gave me the encouragement to actually get it done.
Is this a diggerism? Like, maybe just a digger?
Maybe. Yeah, 100%.
Just a digger, mate. You know, like you haven't got the. Yeah, it's rubbish.
That happened a lot, Pete. It used to happen a lot. I'd sit in meetings within DMO at the time as a representative of this company. Sometimes I'd be representing Land Rover, and there'd be a warrant officer that I'd worked with in the past, or a major or whomever, looking at me, knowing that I was a corporal in the army, and thinking, and the arrogance and ignorance was horrible.
Just a corporal, mate.
Yeah, you're just a corporal. Why should we listen to you?
Especially in the defence industry, it's so still evident, isn't it? I mean, about rank when you're still working in those same.
Defence industry is horrible for it. Yeah. But I mean, I'd like to think it's getting better, and I'm sure it is. But I did face it. There's no doubt about that. I faced it.
So why did you start the consulting business? I guess it was just an opportunity that you saw, not to represent one company. I remember this being a big discussion point in our old office in the old house. That you really wanted to go out there and use your skills to represent small to medium enterprises and get them contracts in defence industry, not just work at the tier 1 level or whatever you call it.
Yeah, the primes.
The primes.
So that's what I did. Yeah.
Tell us what Ironside is. Yeah, tell us what Ironside is.
So at that time,
like what's phase 1 and what is it now?
Yeah, so phase 1 of Ironside, mate, was a small consultancy. We had maybe, and it was me. Rowie was still working for the bank at the time. I had at one point I had maybe 10 different clients that each paid a retained fee for me to represent their product to defence. I was still doing a lot of work in special operations, so I was doing as a go-between between the original manufacturer and an opportunity to demonstrate the system. So I was representing weapon manufacturers, ammunition manufacturers
from overseas,
and all from overseas, and 2 or 3 companies in Australia, setting up demonstration days. I was representing Australian companies in the Middle East. I went back to Kuwait as a civilian. I spent maybe 2 weeks in Kuwait, knocking on the door of major shipping facilities on behalf of a clean energy or I should say clean chemicals manufacturer here in Australia. I did a lot of representational work for Australian companies in Indonesia and Singapore. A lot of representational work for international companies at trade shows such as Avalon and Land Forces and Pacific Maritime and just defence in general. That was the first iteration of Ironside. What was lacking though, Pete, whilst it was all fun and games, and it was giving me the opportunity to travel around the world, but I was traveling independently of Rowie. I was over over in France at air shows and Germany representing.
And we were trying to get pregnant. This is the
Yeah, we
thing. We
were.
were actually doing IVF, and it was a stressful time in our lives.
I spent time in Spain, Germany, France, all over the place, and it was wonderful for me, but it was horrible for Rowie, right? And all I did, mate, and what I realised all I had done was that I'd taken off my uniform. I'd put on a different uniform, but I was doing the same thing. I wasn't home. I was still doing me. I wasn't doing us.
Yeah.
And there was also there was a huge amount of passion for what I was doing missing. I didn't really enjoy the representational piece. I didn't care enough about the product that company had manufactured to be passionate about it. I was just trying to make a buck.
Yeah, it's all about money.
And so at a point in time, I was offered a job. So this is where it all switched to recruitment. I was offered a job by an international arms and weapon manufacturer to be their business development in Australia, and it was a big job. It was paid really well. And I said and I was taken out for dinner at the Crown Casino, and I remember that because my car was broken into that night, and I lost my aviation headset. I was doing some pilot training. I did my private pilot license in between all this. Anyway, and I was offered the job, and I said, and I wanted the job because it was a great company. It still is. And it was an exciting opportunity. And I said, look, I'd love to take the job, but can I maintain some of the interests I have? And the answer was a hard no. We're going to pay you this much. We own you for 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. And so I said, let me think about it. And I didn't like the idea. So I came back to the individual and I said, look, I can't do the job, but I know someone who can. Can you let me put someone in front of you and represent that person as an agency? And he said, absolutely. Who is it? So I did. I made 2 or 3 phone calls, and if the individual listens to this, he's now a very, very senior what's his account manager for a global defense company. He's gone on to carve out an incredible career for himself. He takes credit for my business, and I take credit for his career.
That's fair.
We see each other over a beer occasionally and have a laugh. I made a couple of phone calls. He got the job, and I got paid. And I said to Rowie, we've got to start doing more of this. And that's when Ironside Recruitment was born.
How good is it that Plus representing the lads and girls and helping them get into great careers in their next transition path?
Yeah.
Yeah, it felt good, mate. This was his first job out of defence, and it felt good because I knew it was a good job, and it changed his life for the better. And you know that passion bit I didn't have with all the other stuff. Immediately, I found it with this, and it was that helping people piece that I really wanted more of, and it wasn't. And it's never been helping because they're broken. It's helping because I'm in a position to be able to do something for that person, and I should do it. And I think that ethos was born when I was working as a mechanic within special operations. I'm in a position that enables me to help this person or this crew, and I should do it. And I took that ethos into business, particularly when we started doing recruitment. And then you believed in it. You believed in the journey as well.
But interestingly, you kept running consulting while we did recruitment for quite a while. I wouldn't even.
Yeah, because we needed income.
Yeah.
Because we needed income. And that's why, Rowie. Yeah. So the consulting was paying the bills, and we were...
And allowed us to open the doors on recruitment and buy the software. And
it leads on to, maybe a later discussion, but recruitment isn't flick on a switch and make it happen. It's a $17 billion industry that is governed by framework that I had to learn, that everybody who goes into the industry has to learn. You can't just flick a switch and become a recruiter as a business. It doesn't work that way. And we had to learn that. We had to learn that the hard way, and we had to be very patient to get to the point that we are at now.
13 years later.
13 years
Didn't
later, yeah.
So we crossed paths, I think it's 2018, at the Prime Minister's Veteran Employment Awards.
Yeah, yeah.
Chicken dinner for you guys that night, I think, for supporting veteran employment. I think was
Yeah,
the
we might have
most,
picked it up. Yeah,
something
yeah,
like that.
yeah.
But actually, that moment there was, I think yours was outstanding contribution by an individual to veterans employment. If I look on the screen
Yeah,
next to me,
yeah,
but that
definitely.
was for me. That night was the sort of seeding or the start of of the veteran business community for me, because us getting into that environment and getting invited to a lot of DVA think tanks on employment. I'm like, well, what is there out here for enterprise? What is out here for people starting who want to start into a business? And I'm still really battling. I've been writing to all the states and federal. I call it "Give me an E." All these veteran employment programs. Can you just give me one more E and call it the Veteran Employment and Enterprise Program? Just throw it, because how many, I don't want to blow too much smoke, but how many jobs over time have you guys created or supported?
I've got to say that's probably one thing that I've been in the business 100% of my full-time capacity only in the last 3 years. I kept my career at NAB going, and then I worked in big government for a few years, and before I actually said, all right, I'll come work for the business. Otherwise, I was just in the background, and Glen had his team around him.
Yep.
We have changed systems a lot, so we actually lost count, sadly. But we would say thousands easily.
I confidently thousands, Pete.
Yeah.
And it's not, it's not just tick a box thousands, mate. It's not just we set up an interview, so we'll claim that. It's not just we've encouraged a veteran to apply for a job, so we'll claim that. If we report on an outcome, it's because that person's got a job and it's sustainable, right? And that's always been a point of difference for us.
It's not the numbers for us.
Yeah.
It's the amount of happy people who then refer us on to their mates or companies to work with us. That's the measure of success, not the numbers.
And I'm definitely a single issue zealot on this stuff. The power and the leverage, and veteran enterprise, supporting veteran enterprise is not a handout. It's not even a hand up. I don't think it is about capturing a latent, underutilized potential of a group of highly skilled, highly professional, highly motivated people, and using it as a catalyst to achieve, great things, like for that combat multiplying effect. It's and I just, I chirp about this all the time, but it is, veteran enterprise is just an untapped potential within our community. And part of what we exist for in VBC is to, like, number one, you guys did all of this without VB. You guys did it off your own back. But imagine if we had a world where people who have ideas, or people who maybe want to go into business, but they're too timid, too shy, not ready, can be supported, in a rankless, serviceless community.
Yeah. Love the concept. Love it.
Yeah. And you guys went, again, not blowing too much smoke, but you're multiple nominees and winners of those awards. But again, that led you down, that exposure led you into it must have been about 3 years, Rowie, that you came in to be the CEO, ran the business. And Glen, you stepped into a role, a truly iconic public service role that has been around since the end of World War I. Tell us a little bit about your time as just a corporal, as the repat commissioner.
Yeah.
Mate, my name, repatriation
commissioner. So I actually I've been enjoying the business so much over the last 12 months that I rarely go back and think about what I did while I was working at DVA. And when I do, I kind of need to remind myself how privileged I was to carry that title, albeit for a short period of time. But I will say that I never once underestimated the importance of it and what it meant. So I was, Rowie and I were traveling around Australia with the kids in our caravan with Ironside Resources, or the year before, was it? And
you were doing a bit of consulting.
I was doing a bit of consulting. I was as we were traveling around, Pete, I was bumping into veterans all over the place, right? As you do. And not purposely, just, there's an old bloke at a pub. Go, mate, what do you do? He's got a few tats, um, you know, sort of prison-looking tats. Turns out he's a Vietnam veteran. He's lived in remote Queensland for his entire life since the war. Never been connected to the department, other than fortunately a gold card and so forth, but no other holistic support. So one example, multiple other examples. I knew Don Spinks. I think I'd met him previously through some support for another veteran down here in Melbourne. At the time, he was the RSM of the Army. He'd then gone on to become the Repatriation Commissioner. I knew nothing about what that meant at the time. But what I did know was that it was that the title itself and the role itself was had an overarching responsibility for veteran care and veteran support and the administration of the various Veterans Acts. I was speaking to Don and I said, look, I think there's a gap at DVA, and that gap is the engagement with remote communities and regional communities. And I've figured this out since I've been traveling, that your presence and your reach is strong within capital cities and large regional cities, but you've got nothing in these outlying regional areas. And he said, how do we fix that? And I said, well, I'm happy to come on team and try and work up a solution to do that. I spoke with the secretary, Liz Cossin, at the time, and I was brought on in a capacity as veteran engagement advisor, working within the repatriation office alongside Don Spinks in a part-time capacity. So I fulfilled that role for about 12 months, I think.
Yeah.
And look, I during that time, Pete, I learned about the role of repatriation. I learned about its history. I'll say unashamedly that I fell in love with the position and what it meant to Australia. And what disappointed me so greatly was that it was so so veiled. Our soldiers, sailors, and aviators didn't know who their repatriation commissioner was, and didn't know the history of this absolutely critical, vital role for veteran well-being and veteran and family well-being. It was so rare to speak to anybody who knew what the repatriation commissioner was, what their responsibility was, or even who the repatriation commissioner was. In fact, the only time we'd see the repatriation commissioner would be when he was in Gallipoli or they were in Gallipoli at an event, because there's a key representational piece attached to the position as well.
I remember a lot of examples you shared with me was you would be at that event quietly in your suit at the back with Don up the front in his, official military attire. And your job is to get there early, point out the key veterans in the audience, point out the important people that he should be aware of, and facilitate those connections and chats so that veteran or that person with a, considered service, distinguished service, would actually then get to meet the commissioner and tell their story and share their story and impart that to Don, because he was really, really mindful of that he just didn't know enough or didn't have enough ground level knowledge, and so your job was really about connecting those dots for him.
Yeah, that's right.
Pretty powerful stuff.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. It was a really good opportunity. It also helped me learn more about the department and its function. And I started to get really shitty at the time though too, Pete, because naturally the department has copped a hell of a lot of criticism over many, many years, and much of it, some of it perhaps justified, most of it, in my opinion, not, or unjustified. And so the more I learned about the department and the people working within the department, the more I was frustrated by the rhetoric that was being spun on the street about what was occurring and why things were occurring. And to me, the one position that I could see physically, that I worked with every day, that could make a difference, was the repatriation commissioner. Yeah. And it's not only written that way, but it's written that way in the acts, but its power enabled it to do that. Yeah. There were a couple of key catches though, and those catches were that that over time, the department and the government had cleverly restricted the independent movement of the commissioner and the independent ability for the commissioner to act outside of the department. And they done that knowingly to ensure that despite what the history books had said, DVA still controlled what the commissioner could and couldn't do. And that frustrated the shit out of me too.
Let's just go back to what it was designed for. When World War I ended, we know when tremendous, ridiculous amounts of losses per the population. One whole swathe of the Australian community wiped out. 18 to 25-year-old lads. And the original point of it was that we'll look after you when you get back.
Yeah. When you come home, we'll look after you. That's exactly what was said. Yeah.
And I've got to say, I personally am grateful for the Department of Veteran Affairs. Not a perfect organisation, nothing is, but particularly as returned soldier, the fact we have it. Coppers, fireys, ambos. There's other people who maybe in their daily lives go through significant amounts more trauma than some soldiers, sailors, and airmen. Not saying all, but they don't have this stuff. We are actually blessed to have it, even though it's not a perfect model. We're actually blessed to have it, I believe.
Absolutely. And compared to our allied partners, we're miles ahead. The only comparable nation is Canada, but we're leaps and bounds ahead of the US, the UK in so many ways, and yet we still complain, and we complain based mostly due to lack of knowledge and lack of awareness and lack of understanding as to how to access and who and what services and support exist. And I go back to it. The one position that is enabled by the acts to alleviate that is the Repatriation Commission and the position of Repatriation Commissioner. And so Don got to the point of reaching retirement, and naturally I learned that the position would become vacant. And so I discussed it with Rowie. We at the time had a general manager running our business. What? Oh, sorry. No, you were back in the business, so weren't you? Sorry, honey. Yeah, Rowie was back in the business, running it incredibly well. And so I made a decision that I would apply for the position, and we'd see what occurred, basically.
Yeah. And it would mean a lot of time in Canberra, a lot of time traveling.
Understanding what it meant, that it meant, not living, but working from Canberra, living in Melbourne a lot of time away. But that's by the by. It was a consideration, but it wasn't going to prevent us from making that decision. So the applications went in, and look, I knew what I was up against, Pete. Right? I'm not naive, mate. I'd faced it countless times before in business and in private industry, and I was told very clearly by senior defence leaders, senior advocates within the defence community, that I'd be wasting my time if I applied for the position. That Don was the first non-commissioned officer to attain the role of Repatriation Commissioner. He was also the regimental sergeant major of the Australian Army.
He's a big deal, though. Like,
he's a big player, mate. He's a big player, right? Physically and in presence as well. Yeah. Liz Cosson, whom I have a lot of respect for as a person, she sat me down in her office and she said, "Glenn, the Repatriation Commissioner has quite a presence." And I remember, and I thought to myself, I'm not a big bloke, right? And I thought, Don's huge. Don has this street presence about him, and I thought, wow, I'm even up against that. But bugger it, we're doing this, and you know what encouraged me more than anything? I had the full support of countless numbers, countless, maybe say 7 letters of referral from reference, I should say, or support from the major ex-service organisations in Australia, all bar the RAR Association, and that's fine. And I can and I had a good conversation with the president.
And credentials from your time in RSL Victoria, which
I'm on board at RSL Vic, so I knew a little bit about the ex-service organisation, of course, but all community.
Yeah, and
so anyway, off the application process went. Mate,
while you're doing the
I was still doing the I was still in the role of advisor with to Don Spinks when the application went in. Yeah. So Don was due to retire. I went to Canberra for a normal work week. I'd spend 2 or 3 days in Canberra a week. Don was due to retire the week after. There was still no replacement for Don. There was going to be a hiatus. Everyone was wondering how the government was going to overcome this. Was Gwen Shern going to step into the position? Was somebody was a
those who don't know, Glen was a families commissioner,
family advocate commissioner. Was an SES band public servant going to step into the position and act? No one knew. I opened up my computer. There was a letter from the Minister of Veterans Affairs, and I was appointed to the position of acting repatriation commissioner. I printed out the letter. I took it into Don. Don knew about what was occurring. Everything was kept very quiet, naturally. And Don and I set about a handover takeover period, which would only really require a week at best, because I've been working alongside Don for 12 months. And so
2 years ago, July 2023.
Yeah, 2 years ago that was. And so I naturally, mate, I accepted the position, and I knew what it meant. I knew it didn't mean that I would achieve the substantive position. But what I knew, mate, sure as hell, was that I was going to take advantage of being the repatriation commissioner for as long as I had the role.
Acting or not, mate, you're in the seat. And mate, I've got to admit, well, when I was watching you at this time, I could not have been prouder. Not only as you as an individual, and the things that you and Rowie have done together. And I really saw this as a mutual thing, that your mutual contribution to the community, not just through your businesses but through other stuff. But how good is it a fucking corporal, mate, gets the repat job?
I'll tell you what, mate, there was a couple of fist pumps, and Pete, I was told to keep my mouth shut. I was told to keep my head down. I was told not to make any decisions, not to ruffle any feathers.
You were told not to post on this.
I was told not to use social media. I was effectively told just to accept the position, turn up to the office, and perform the role without performing the role. Right?
Yeah.
I wasn't going to accept that, mate, and no one should, and I wouldn't have thought anyone would. And what I knew it meant was that, it wasn't going to make a difference, Pete, because I knew that I wasn't going to stay in the position, because I knew inevitably that the history of the role would play out, and that the role would go back to a senior military officer. And so I knew I had this short window to make a difference and do something. And so I set about it, mate, and did my best.
And not saying that senior officers are obviously not bad people, and they're just amazing, brilliant, they are a career of service to the country and to the nation and to the military. Anyway, we'll move on from DVA, but unless you've got a final note, I was just super proud.
I will say, Pete, before we do that the position went to Brigadier Khalil Fagan, and I unequivocally supported that decision. And I still do. I speak to Khalil, once a month. We used to speak almost every day. Khalil has settled into the role. He's doing everything he can. He's as frustrated by the position that I was. It doesn't have the freedom of movement that it should. We talk about an independent body supporting veterans. That is the Repatriation Commission. It's there, right?
We don't need to reinvent the wheel.
We don't need to reinvent the wheel, mate. It exists. And we need a government that acknowledges that and allows the commissioner to do his or her job.
Which is
that's the last point I'll say.
Yeah. And it's simply to look after soldiers, sailors, and airmen when they come home.
Yeah.
We'll look after you.
Yeah. Look, Well, I just think it's a massive shout out, and I know you're far too humble to blow your own trumpet, but just even to sit in that seat, mate. Just credit to you, man. It's top stuff.
Thanks, dude. Appreciate it, Pete.
Let's let's talk about where you are now and what's next. Tell us what's going on. You know, you're back in the business, Rowie. Are you co-chairing, running this thing together?
Yeah, well, you know, he had to apply for his job back. It was a rigorous.
Yeah, I know.
Make an application. Yeah. Get some references.
Yeah.
Look,
I mean, you've been full time in the business as you're already director, but you know, leading growth in the beginning Ironside. What, a year?
12 months,
Yeah, over a year.
Pete, I'll tell you now, mate, without a word of a lie, Rowie and I, me personally, from a headspace perspective, from a life balance perspective, are in the best position and best space that we've ever been. And that doesn't mean we're making more money than we've ever made. It's got nothing to do with that, mate. It's about the fact that we are comfortable in the decisions that we've made and the decisions that have been made for us to land us in this office working back to back.
Can I after going through this chat, you know, you've had this, dare I say, parallel or concurrent careers. You know, Ro, you're doing your stuff with NAB, and mate, you soldiering on and soldiering on. It always seems to feel that the right place for you two to be together is to be together. You know, finally after 20 years. Is that, how much has that got to do with it now that you've finally come to this point of?
Yeah,
it's awesome.
Somebody said to us in Bali the other day, "Oh, couples who stay together often look alike." And we looked at each other and went,
"Don't
look alike."
Yeah, come on.
No, that's weird. No, I think a big part of it is I often describe it like that. Like, Glen's a really top-down thinker. He's a real strategist. He's ambitious. He's got an entrepreneurial brain. He's not afraid of taking any risks. I'm the polar opposite.
Yeah.
I come from an analytical, detail-driven background where I take no risks. I was in data analytics in NAB. That's what got me my career through to leading the business. But I always went to the lawyers, the risk managers, and the the stakeholders in the business to make my decision and take it to the board. We don't have that here, so we just we yin and yang on it, and we figure it all out. And we've probably, especially over the last few years, brought in different types of people to support us in doing that. We've just got a new social media manager working with us, and she's asking us some pretty nitty-gritty questions, and it's pretty cool. She identified it yesterday. She said, "I totally see Glen's like that and you're like that." I went, that's how it works. And sometimes there's a little bit of a gap in the middle. We need to bring other people in to help us negotiate it all. But we do work really well as a team.
It's also super important to have, not necessarily saying a married partner in business, but a partner in business. And, you know, I would not be successful where I am without Matt Mosley as my complementary business partner. Kat, my wife, always, you bloody talk to him on the phone more than I do. And, like Mose and I all, probably talk 3 or 4 times a day, just talking shit or whatever. But he's exactly the same. Like, he compliments me. Like, I cannot do detail. I'm a butterfly chasing scatterbrain who cannot focus on the next thing. And Matt's primary job is just to say, "Pete, that's a shit idea, mate. We're not doing that. Can we just go back to base?" "No, Pete, we're not doing that." "Okay, let's just stick to what we're doing." So just having that, whether it's your spouse or partner, I really do. The balance of having that other person who's got different skill sets to you is just a critical driver for business success.
You're not kidding, mate. Yeah, absolutely. Shared values go a long way too.
Yeah.
But, I think this is the beauty of your own business, Pete, and those that are listening to this will understand this as well, that it gives you an opportunity to set a lifestyle that works for you.
Yeah.
And it's a wonderful, wonderful thing. And nothing in business ever comes easily. And it's not right to say that anybody who has been even in the slightest way successful in business that they're lucky, because none of it comes with luck. There's always, we've spoken about countless sliding door moments during this podcast, but those moments in time are decisions that people make that end up having consequences, be they negative or positive, that the way in which you react to those outcomes will determine what happens next and what happens next. And the way in which you interact with people will ultimately have an effect on what happens potentially in your business. Maybe not in a week, maybe not in 2 weeks, but maybe in 10 years. We've just, and I'll just give you one example of what I mean by that. We've just secured a young naval communications technician, a role with a tier 1 mining company in remote Western Australia. And we started talking to this company over 10 years ago, Pete. It was one of the first companies we spoke to about hiring veterans. 10 years have passed. We haven't placed one veteran into this company until the contract was signed yesterday. And it's our first veteran. But I haven't, we haven't gone, it's too hard, walk away. We've maintained connection. We've stuck to our values. We haven't said to them, as they've asked of us countless times over that years, that we'll do work for free, because we value the work that we do, and we know that it's worth money, and we know that companies should pay for a service. And so we've stuck true to that, and we haven't lowered our standard to try and nestle up next to the organisation. But ultimately, 10 years downstream, we're working with them, and we'll continue to build more opportunities for more veterans through that company. But the lesson I guess I'm imparting there is never burn a bridge, and business is all about network. It's about sometimes it's about playing the game and just politely nodding and walking the other way. It's not all about post-nominals and company director courses and MBAs. There's so much more to success in business than those theoretical and other tools that enable you to learn business.
Living and learning on the fly a lot of the time.
Yeah, man.
Shout us out a plug. Who should be contacting Ironside Resources, both from a supplier and a worker perspective?
Yeah. So look, mate, from we'll start with the veterans and candidate perspective. So we work with every level of defence, from senior commissioned officers through to soldiers who have served their minimum time of service and want to transition. Rowie established our company as a social enterprise about 12 months ago now, maybe a little bit longer.
Yeah.
So what that means, Pete, is that there's a whole bunch of governance associated with that, but we're a certified and recognised social trader, which in Victoria, importantly, has quite a bit of sway, and other states are starting to catch on, Queensland in particular, New South Wales. What it recognises is that we're for profit, for purpose. It's simply said that way.
Yeah.
We will both spend a lot of our day just simply talking to veterans and family members about what they're doing, and often they're serving. Sometimes they've transitioned and they've worked 2 or 3 different careers and want to think about something else. But in that communication, we're building network, we're building database, we're encouraging them to refer their friends to us to seek the same sort of help. So realistically, our remit is to support people who have served in the Defence Force. So if there are people out there thinking about a career change or transitioning from Defence, register with Ironside Resources and start to absorb the information that we're presenting to you.
Yeah. And we'll make sure we share all of those links into the show notes and push out as well. What about from a supplier perspective? What about who's your best customers? Who should be using you?
Yeah, again, Rowie, I'll start. You can finish, I guess. So we have a really strong pedigree in mining, Pete. You know that. We work with a number of tier 1 mining companies. Rowie's been delivering our flagship entry program into mining that is underpinned by a trade upgrade package, currently and prioritising heavy diesel mechanics leaving the Army and Navy and Air Force. So any mining service provider or prime that is seeking to rectify a resource gap in trades, that is willing to invest in a trade upgrade or a skills gap program of some description based on the model that we have developed, that we know works. We've delivered it to Fortescue, we've delivered it to Westtrac Caterpillar, and we're now delivering it to McMahon Mining Services. We'd love to speak to you, in particular Queensland-based, actually. Pete, we're seeking more opportunity for veterans into mining up in Queensland.
Yeah, we know that's where that it is the primary location that people settle back.
Yeah, a lot of our ex-defence community want to be in Queensland, in particular southeast Queensland.
Yeah, why wouldn't you?
Civil infrastructure, tier ones. We're doing quite a bit of work with them currently down here in Melbourne. So we're interested in finding pathways for veterans to enter the civil infrastructure and construction sectors. We believe and we know through lived experience and success that it's quite a seamless transition from a cultural and workplace perspective, and it offers significant careers for even those who consider themselves to have no skills coming from defence, which is a fallacy. Everyone who leaves defence has a multitude of skills that are transferable to the civilian job market. Nobody is underskilled in defence. Everybody who serves in the Defence Force has skills that are transferable. Everyone in every trade set, and by trade set I mean every core and every job. We want to work with companies that invest in their people. We don't want to work with companies who want something for free.
And not ticking boxes.
No, basically. We don't want to work with companies who prefer to work with a charity to seek, to tick a box and say they're employing veterans.
DNI.
No.
It's got to have there's some element of that.
We're not interested in, and Ro, you're right, we're not interested in talking to companies who want to work with veterans to tick a diversity and equity and inclusion box. If you've got a workforce solution problem, if you need better skilled people in your workforce, better leadership, better communication, enhanced integrity, and you're willing to invest in it, we'll talk with you.
And I want to add to that we have diverse recruitment solutions that we provide here. So it's not just about the recruitment placement process that we talked about initially. We offer a labour hire and contractor workforce to our employers, and even program-based recruitment like we've done with North East Link here in Melbourne in the last couple of years. It's a really strong value-add position that we do in terms of providing various ways to hire veterans into their workforce, but also have our support in nurturing that employee into the organisation from start to finish and being there as their teammate, if you like, alongside their hiring managers and recruitment teams internally.
Yeah.
Well, I like that you put just shout out there about the DEI stuff, and it's one of the things that I'm constantly conflicted with as I push down the procurement narrative. And I'm in discussions, with a very, very large Australian bank at the moment. One of them that's not yellow, one of the other colours, and talking to their procurement team, they're like, but how do we push the story around social good for veterans? And I'm like, this is a really challenging card for me to play, because I will not play the handout, throw a veteran a bone because they got PTSD and they all want to top themselves and all that kind of stuff card. Yeah. Okay, we recognize that there's plenty of people that need help because of their service. However, from a branding position, we've got to put ourselves as being quality people who do great things. And then that's where, particularly from the veteran business narrative, and the other, just while on my little soapbox here, I really want to ramp up the conversation around veteran procurement policies and initiatives. And I really want to push it out because, number one, I see a great opportunity for Indigenous and veteran to come together here. We know that Indigenous procurement pushes many, many billions of dollars a year, and it does a lot of great for those businesses. But I think if you've got two very strong, passionate communities, First Nations who ultimately connected to this country, and then the defenders of this nation who put their lives on the line. I think there's so many synergies and ways we can work together alongside Indigenous, because we're obviously so passionate about this country, this land, and and our history. So
I love the way you put that, Pete. I reckon that's really powerful.
Yeah.
We're seeing a bit of it, which is good, and I hope you're happy about and encouraged by it. I think we need to see more of it. We when I sort of criticise the diversity, equity, inclusion piece, I don't mean to be too blunt or brazen, but what we know that commercially, we as a business will inevitably fit within that space somewhere within large corporates. But when I say we don't want to work within that sphere, I don't want to work with hardline diversity, equity, inclusion managers that just want to say they're working with a veteran company to tick a box and
not focus on quality,
and
not focus on the people behind this thing, because ultimately, I don't want handouts or special treatment as a veteran business owner, but I do want us to be seen as veteran owned as our point of difference, and that when you have two like apples, and one of them has a service career, courage, character, commitment. And demonstrated, life experience. Maybe that is the edge for me to get across the line. Well,
that's something that we need to work on, because I agree with you, Pete. We want to be acknowledged for being a veteran-owned business, but why, right? So what's the value? What's the value to industry other than good on him, he served our country, we should use his company, right? Like, piss that off. What's the value to Australian industry in working with a veteran-owned company? You've mentioned some of it, Pete, and there's and all of that's true. It's straight shooting. It's a no bullshit approach to business. It's integrity in business.
Quality outcomes over just doing a job.
It's correct. It's doing a job and doing it properly. So yes, mate, we're behind that, and we'd love to see more of it. We'd love to work with VBC and the community in building that knowledge. And when we are enabled to have a conversation, Rowie and I, with tier 1 companies or tier 2s or whomever is in between, and at the point that they realise that, hey, we've got all this money to spend on not a diverse workforce, Rory. What am I looking for? On initiatives, right? Particularly projects that are funded by government. There's a shit ton of money that comes in for different initiatives. When the penny drops, and in our case, through our recognition as a social enterprise, and the reason we're a social enterprise is because we're for profit, and the work we do for profit supports the veteran community, and a huge portion of our net profit goes back into our business to support the veteran community. That's the governance behind social enterprise. When organisations realise that, hey, we can actually do something different to Indigenous procurement, we can actually do veteran procurement and spend the same bucket of money, they're enlightened and they love it. So your organisation, VBC, can be instrumental in supporting other veteran-owned businesses in attaining that accreditation, because more and more as we go through the next number of years, I think that's going to become more prevalent across states outside of Victoria.
This is really interesting to me, because we've made the change from a charity to profit for purpose, and we've instilled it into our constitution about why we exist and what we do and how we deliver services. But I am really interested in understanding how we go through and do the application for social trader, social enterprise ourselves, because it's what we exist for. But maybe that's another time for another chat with you guys.
I'll give a quick shout out here, just very briefly. The bloke who did it for us is an ex-Navy submariner. His name's Joe Piasecki. He's is an absolute subject matter expert in this. He owns his own company called Edify Connect, and you'll find Joe on our website. So go to our website at ironsideresources.com.au. Look for our team. Joe's represented as our social enterprise.
More in our opinion.
He's on the website, social enterprise expert, and you'll be able to track Joe down from that link.
Just something random there, right? Is I'm on the mission to certify 1,000 businesses veteran owned, because I was chatting with the head of Qantas procurement a couple of weeks ago. A lovely guy, he's got a fat checkbook, buys lots of planes and things like that. And he was just like, oh, I get it. Veteran procurement, we do all this stuff over here, but why hasn't the light bulb gone off a bit earlier? And one of the things why I'm really driving to certify more businesses is because we are every business. We're butchers, bakers, candlestick makers. We're literally every business. And look, having seen Joe there, Joe's just another person who's a veteran providing another service. And we know that there's 16,000 Indigenous businesses certified and registered in Australia. I believe there must be 25, 30,000 of us. And if we can come together and capture those,
powerful, mate.
Joes of the world, we will nearly be able to provide everything at any one time. I really believe we are that diverse as a community.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah, I love it. Thank you so much for your time. Like, seriously, when we kicked off this, I was only thinking we'd do an hour, but man, the first half of it, man, I was getting a little bit aroused with my Ramey Worry stories. Mate, it was so good. But I guess one of the really important things for me is I really appreciate you both coming on together. But the story, it's not just Glen's story, it's not just Rowi's story, but your story as a team, as a family, and what you guys have mutually achieved in both the support of each other through your careers, but your numerous accolades, sitting in that amazing seat as the Repatriation Commissioner, Glen, and every success you've had in Ironside. And I just can't wait to keep and watch going forward. So, mate, thank you both.
It's really cool. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to have a chat, Pete. It's really nice.
Really cool. So,
thanks to the support of the community out there.
And what you've done with BBC.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's early days. So look, I'm going to wrap there. If you're a veteran or you're a partner or spouse, and by veteran, we don't care whether you're a war veteran, young, old, we don't care what rank, what service, whether you're deployed or didn't deployed, we just want to acknowledge people and community that put on a uniform and serve the country and serve the nation. If you're in any way interested or inclined or passionate about business, come along and say good day. You can get in touch with us, and we'll put all Glen and Rowena's contacts and the businesses into the show notes. So I'm going to wrap it there. So, Pete, listen, this is another episode of the Military Mindset for Business pod. Take care, everybody, and have a great day. Thanks, Glen and Rowie.
See you, team. Thanks, mate.